And now joining me to further the discussion on sustainable aging are two leading specialists in the geriatric field. Dr. Jamie Nyman-Kimmel is a board-certified clinical neuropsychologist. Over the last 30-some-odd years, Dr. Nyman-Kimmel has provided neuropsychological assessments, diagnoses, clinical intervention, and psychoeducation for thousands of patients, all with a myriad of developmental, cognitive, behavioral, and emotional complexities. And also joining the panel is the forever young Dr. Alexandra Montesi, a neuropsychologist and geropsychologist for the last 30 years. Dr. Montesi has dedicated her life to a highly specialized field of practice that really delves into the relationships between the brain and brain disorders, the assessment of cognitive and behavioral functioning, the design of effective treatment plans. Thank you both so much for being here.
Thank you for having us, David.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Now, I got both of you here for the record simply because I was trying to find something new, something different, right? We hear the same stuff all the time about the whole aging process, how to age well. As you guys know, there are so many advertisements, so many commercials on TV, how to stay young forever. Older folks are really targeted, sadly. The mass marketing of all different kinds of drugs, medications, herbs, supplements, commercials. They're the senior living assisted facilities, just an endless loop of the cure-all for getting old. So during my research, doctors, I read something about this new brain check baseline. I hadn't heard about this before. So tell us exactly what BCB, brain check baseline, is, how you both got involved as we discuss the more macro issue of how to stay healthy as we all get older. Dr. Nyman-Kimmel, first to you, and then to Dr. Montesi.
Well, okay, first and foremost, we're all for aging well. So let's put that out there right away. The other issue for us is that not everybody ages the same. So one size doesn't fit all. And if you've seen one 60-year-old, you've seen one 60-year-old is really how we see it. And all of those things that you just mentioned in terms of the supplements and all of the recommendations to age well, those are wonderful. However, they're not specific and individualized. So what Alexandra and I did, and we've known each other, it's been, 35 years now, Alex? We've been doing what we call lifespan assessments. So we've tested children and adolescents and adults and geriatric assessments. So a lifespan assessment. And what we've noticed is that there is a lack of, at this point, of a more individualized approach. So Brain Check Baseline for us is a way to assess and to derive a baseline of your cognitive profile. It is a primary prevention tool so that we can give you a map of how your particular brain is working or the areas that you might need to focus on. So it's this very proactive rather than reactive approach so that folks can be more in control of their lifespan, their brain trajectory, their brain health, right? So a baseline is an assessment when you're healthy, right? And we use that baseline approach because it's a starting point. It's a way to measure how you are in a healthy state. And then, we do that all the time. We do that with our teeth. We do that with our hearts. Mammograms, these are all baseline measurements. Colonoscopies are baseline measurements so that you can begin to track the health of those parts of your body to make sure that they're within expectation or following a typical pattern. So we thought, why not do that with your brain? If you are not anything, you are your brain. So that's why we got together. We put together this assessment. The best comparison of a person's cognitive status is to themselves, right? In a healthy state. We don't want to rely on the healthcare providers so that they can guess where we should be or where we've come from. So this is the proactive baseline of how you are functioning so that you can maintain knowledge of that and do what you need to do for your brain. Does that make sense?
It does. And Dr. Montesi, then take this even a step further. Your overview of BCB, how you got involved, and then Dr. Nyman-Kimmel and Dr. Montesi, is this done through testing, written tests? You talk to patients, you take x-rays, CAT scans. Talk more about that. Begin with Dr. Montesi, and we can go back to you, Doctor.
Yes, we do like paper and pencil manipulative tests. We're not into the CAT scans and PET scans. That's not our. And basically our purpose is to find out how are you functioning currently, and we can compare you to same age mates with the same education, background, and experience.
Dr. Nyman-Killamil, take our viewers through this testing process so we get a better understanding about how this all works.
Keep in mind, all of the assessments that you're talking about, CAT scans and MRIs, they have their place. What we're saying is that this is really a measure, and it's done face to face. We have some history of who you are as a person and your health history. And then we assess specific areas of brain functioning, including memory and attention and problem solving, the things that we want to know about and we want to keep track of, if you will, keep our finger on the pulse of those things so that if we are aging and there is typical decline, we are all going to decline in a typical way. If I can tell you, oh, that's typical, I can alleviate a lot of anxiety and stress. And if I tell you, well, it's not as typical as we would hope, then I can actually put into place a plan that is very specific and detailed to your brain needs, which includes a lot of what goes on in what you noted at the outset of the introduction, but it's really much more tailored. So there's nothing invasive, there's no blood draws, there's no fluid draws. It's really about your brain doing the things that your brain needs to do within this more controlled environment.
So let's say, for example, you have a patient. How do you do that intel gathering? How do you get all the info from them?
Such a good question, because it really depends on the presentation. You may have Alexander and I saw somebody who has a history of concussion as a young person who played a lot of sports and had family members who had early onset dementia. And what he wanted is a baseline. I want to know what my baseline is for me. So we took information from him. We also took information from his spouse. And that was helpful. With older folks, where there might be some decline or some impact, we can take information from not only spouses, but also children, grown adult children. They can be very helpful too, especially if they're involved in the care of their parents.
Dr. Nyman-Killamil, and then we'll get to Dr. Montesi in just a moment. I want to get back to something you said, Dr. Nyman-Killamil. You mentioned the x-rays, or one of the two of you, the CAT scans, the PET scans. I don't want to push back on what you're doing, but a legitimate question. Obviously, there are many in the medical profession who say, listen, science is everything today. We can do a PET scan, we can do an x-ray, we can do a CAT scan, we can do an MRI. They're going to give us the best pictures of your brain, a comprehensive roadmap. You know, we can see right there, do you have dementia? Do you have Alzheimer's? Do you have this? Do you have that? Why is your modality possibly better or worse than this? And I hope I'm not offending you, just trying to understand everything here.
No, that's an excellent question. And pictures are wonderful. And believe me, Alexander and I do not poo-poo the MRIs and the CAT scans, because they absolutely are important. What they don't do is give you functional information. And what this brain check baseline does is gives you functional information, right? So it's not a picture, it's how are you doing the thing that we're asking you to do. Are all the parts of your brain in place? Do we see, even if we see in some of those scans that there are aspects of the brain that there's been atrophy, meaning there's been shrinkage, we still don't know what that plays out as in the real world. We still don't know how that manifests. So this particular baseline check is really a functional, utilitarian manifestation of your particular brain's capabilities and abilities.
Dr. Montesi, there is no question many people are obviously living well into their 80s, 90s, even 100s. So with that said, obviously we're all at greater risk for these neurodegenerative disorders. I mentioned earlier the memory loss, the dementia, the Alzheimer's, etc. I was reading, correct me if I'm wrong on this, that the number of people who could experience cognitive challenges, brain challenges, is expected to triple in 2050. I mean, that's crazy. Can you talk about this stat? It's almost unbelievable.
Well, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, 1/5 of Americans will be over the age of 65 by 2030. And the impact of that is that so many adults that are getting older are worrying about their later life and will it be optimal. And what we found is a lot of people are concerned about the cost factor The government identifies the projections for the cost. In 2022, it was $321 billion. And by 2050, it's supposed to be close to $1 trillion. And 1/3 of the out-of-pocket cost is going to be incurred by family members. The government will pick up 2/3, but the family will pick up the third. So people are concerned, if that's the case, how am I going to take care of myself? I don't want to be a burden to my family. And what are some of the things that we can do to prepare ourselves and create a good brain health lifespan? And what are the lifestyle issues that we need to be concerned about so that we can age successfully?
I'm going to ask a question that I should never ask, and I'll probably get fallout from it. Do I have this right? You're in your mid-70s, Dr. Montesi. You look like a spring chicken. You are so youthful. You're going strong. I mean, do I have that right? Or, oh gosh, I probably said the wrong thing, I'm sure.
Well, I'm going to be 76 in about 2 weeks.
What is your key to staying young then?
If you don't use it, you lose it. And in order to have good brain health, you have to flex your brain muscle. And lifelong learning is one thing. Another is to keep your brain active, try new things, develop new hobbies, stay engaged socially, use the MIND diet, which is a Mediterranean and hypertension diet, so that you can fuel your brain through your gut. And so your brain and your gut are the A team. And so if you're healthy, you eat right, you're going to be able to function more effectively. So you need to have a holistic approach to aging. And we at BCB are into that because brain health is a marathon. And in order to live long, you have to get into shape.
The reason I'm appreciative of this new segment we're producing about this is because this story hasn't been told yet. I sort of have advanced knowledge of this because I read about it. You are just launching this here, and it is so new. The other thing I wanted to talk about and how BCB is going to parlay into this, and this is just a question for both of you, and I'm sort of giving kind of a commentary. I may be off on this, but it does seem to me there is such a stigma when we talk about cognitive decline. In other words, I've never met an old person who says, hey, you know what, I'm really old. Maybe I should just give you my driver's license and I shouldn't have my car. I'm a risk to everybody on the road. You know, in other words, old folks are so reluctant to talk about their mental decline, right? They want their independence. They're really frightened when it's taken away from them. Often old people don't share with their families what their decline is, their memory, their dementia, what have you. It seems there's shame involved with all of this. It isolates older people. I said all this because Dr. Montesi made a great point. We just got to take better care of ourselves, whatever that care is. So talk, Dr. Nyman, Kimmel, and Montesi, about how BCB plays into that role so we do have fewer problems.
Well, you're right about that. There's a lot of shame involved in cognitive loss or loss of ability. What we're trying to let you know is there's typical loss, and those are not the losses to run with scissors about, right? Those are the losses to go, okay, that's to be expected. Part of our putting together this really accessible assessment of your cognitive baseline was to really give everybody a deep breath to go, you're going through what's typical. It's to minimize the anxiety and the fear about what's happening, and to really talk about what's typical and what's to be expected. Because you're right, David, people go to their doctor, they don't spend a lot of time with their doctor, and a lot of doctors don't ask the questions that would indicate if there's a problem or if there's cognitive decline, because again, of shame. And if you have individuals who are living alone, they might not really have a sense of whether or not they are losing some of their abilities. So, I mean, to circle back, part of the reason for Brain Check Baseline is to demystify the aging process, to try to minimize the anxiety and the fears about what's typical, and also to let you know that there are myths that we need to debunk, right? You can teach old dogs new tricks, right? The myth that you can't is false, right? Exercise is really important. Telling older folks to, careful there, careful there. These are a lot of myths that people really adhere to. And as you said at the start, there's a lot going on out there. We're changing our mindset about aging and about how to age in a healthy way and in a way that works for longevity. And that's really why we put this together. Accessibility and debunking these myths and minimizing the anxiety regarding aging and typical aging.
Speaking about typical aging, Dr. Montesi, you said you're 76. The obvious question, you're 76, you're in great shape. Why are there other 76-year-old people who horrible rheumatoid arthritis, horrible heart problems, terrible memory loss? They are saddled and burdened with such health disorders. Why do some age so well and others, even at 70, they can barely walk, they can barely survive? There's such a disparity in how we age here in the U.S. and really throughout the world. Is that not the case?
Well, 50 to 25% of your healthcare issues will be contributed to your genes and your family. But we have control over our lives and we can make positive decisions. And eating healthy, exercising, staying socially engaged, being engaged in lifelong learning, these are all pieces of the puzzle that we can control. Oftentimes we can't control other issues that come about from things that we've experienced with our families or our previous health histories. But we can focus on the things that we can control. The things that we can't control, we have to kind of say, well, that's that. But oftentimes some of our patients have basically not been given appropriate information about what typical aging is and what you can do about it, rather than only dealing with the physiological health aspects of it. There are things that you can do to improve the quality of your life and create a better brain health lifestyle through lifestyle and activities.
David, before this interview ends, you must ask Dr. Montesi about how she learned to fly a plane, how she learned to ride a Harley Davidson motorcycle. This woman is very complex in her abilities.
Okay, we're not leaving this interview until we hear that story. Dr. Montesi, tell us.
Well, my husband is the pilot, and he said, look, in case something happens to me, you need to learn how to fly the plane. And so he put me in touch with a guy, and he said, okay, now you're going to learn how to fly the plane, take the controls, and let's go. And that's how it started.
And the Harley Davidson?
Well, I had a boyfriend who had a Norton 750. And he said, I like to ride my bike and I don't want anybody on the back. And so if you want to go with us, then you're going to have to get your own bike and learn how to ride a bike. And that's what happened.
Thank you both so much, Dr. Jamie Nyman-Kimmel and Dr. Alexandra Montesi, for a great interview. Thank you for this wealth of knowledge.